For over 3,000 years, one mystery has captivated historians, archaeologists, explorers, and treasure hunters alike: the legendary wealth of King Solomon.
Solomon's wealth was absolutely out of this world.
The Bible describes him as not only the wisest ruler of his time, but also the richest, with treasures so vast that they seemed almost beyond imagination. Ancient writings tell us that Solomon built a grand temple in Jerusalem, a structure adorned with immense riches and precious metals. They speak of gold mines, of ships sailing to faraway lands called Ophir and Tarshish, and of fleets that returned every 3 years laden with gold, silver, ivory, apes, and even peacocks. But the central question has haunted generations. Where did Solomon's immense wealth come from, and what happened to it? For centuries, this mystery has inspired expeditions, daring quests, and entire books. And now, in 2025, new discoveries in the deserts of Israel may finally reveal the truth, though what researchers have found is far more astonishing than the old legends ever suggested. The story of Solomon's treasure begins in the ancient kingdom of Israel. Around 3,000 years ago, King Solomon inherited the throne from his father David and soon became one of the most celebrated rulers of the biblical age. His reputation rested on 3 things: his wisdom, his women, and his wealth. According to the Book of Kings, King Solomon surpassed all the kings of the earth in riches and in wisdom. The descriptions of his fortune are staggering, so much so that they often sound mythical. The Bible tells of entire fleets of ships under Solomon's command, traveling to distant, exotic lands. Every 3 years, these ships returned with treasures of gold and silver, rare animals, and precious stones. The names Ophir and Tarshish are repeated in the ancient texts, yet no one has ever been able to prove exactly where these mysterious places were located. Were they real trading centers or merely symbolic names woven into scripture? The story of Solomon's fortune is further colored by the arrival of a famous visitor, the Queen of Sheba. This legendary queen, described as both powerful and beautiful, visited Solomon in Jerusalem bearing gifts beyond imagination. She brought with her 120 talents of gold, nearly 4 tons in modern measurements, alongside spices and gems of extraordinary value. But where did she obtain this immense wealth? Could her riches have been connected to the same mysterious sources that supplied Solomon's own treasure? The mystery deepened with the arrival of Portuguese explorers in southern Africa in the 1500s. They encountered local tales of ships said to have come in ancient times, carrying Solomon's servants to collect gold from a land they called Ophir. The Portuguese even discovered ancient stone ruins, whispering reminders of a lost, powerful civilization. Could Solomon's mines have been hidden deep in Africa all along? The quest to uncover Solomon's treasure captivated not only kings and adventurers, but also a young boy in Germany named Karl Mauck. Born in 1837, Karl was the son of a carpenter and grew up with little wealth of his own. For his 10th birthday, he received a gift that would change his life: a world atlas. On its pages, much of Africa appeared as blank space, labeled only as unexplored territory. The sight filled Karl with dreams. Determined to one day fill in those unknown places, he spent the next decade preparing himself. He learned languages, studied medicine, astronomy, and geology, and trained his body through long daily walks. By the time he reached Africa in 1865, he only had a compass, a knife, a blanket, and a pistol. But he carried with him a dream: to uncover Solomon's lost mines. Mauck's journey was perilous. He battled hunger, disease, and exhaustion. he narrowly avoided starvation and imprisonment. Yet he pressed forward, guided by fragments of Portuguese writings and local legends. A Portuguese captain, Vicente Pegado, had once described a fortress built of stones of marvelous size in southern Africa, among gold mines that some believed to be the palace of Queen of Sheba. Inspired by these accounts, Carl searched tirelessly. In 1867, a stroke of fortune arrived when he met Henry Hartley, a British hunter. Hartley reported strange excavations he had seen while tracking elephants, pits dug into quartz rock that seemed unnatural. When Carl examined them, he realized they contained traces of gold. His heart raced. Newspapers in Europe soon spread the news. A German explorer had discovered gold fields in Africa. But for Moch, the discovery of gold was only the beginning. He believed that somewhere nearby lay the ruins of Solomon's city, the very source of his immense wealth. 4 years later, in 1871, Moch's persistence finally paid off. Local tribesmen guided him to an extraordinary site, ruins rising from the African landscape made of massive stone walls fitted together without mortar. This was no ordinary settlement. The structures were unlike anything Europeans had seen in sub-Saharan Africa. The ruins, later known as Great Zimbabwe, stunned Moch. He believed he had found the palace of Queen of Sheba and perhaps even the legendary city tied to Solomon's wealth. He examined the architecture and noted similarities to biblical descriptions of Solomon's temple. The massive stones reminded him of the great stones, costly stones, and hewn stones mentioned in Scripture. Even wooden beams found among the ruins convinced him they were made of cedar, just like the wood imported from Lebanon for Solomon's temple. To Moch, the evidence was undeniable. He was certain he had uncovered proof of Solomon's lost kingdom. But Carl Moch's triumph was short-lived. Though his discoveries sparked fascination across Europe and even inspired H. Rider Haggard's famous novel, King Solomon's Mines, the truth about the ruins was not what he believed. Later archaeological investigations revealed that the wood he had identified as Lebanese cedar was in fact local African sandalwood. The ruins themselves, far from being 3,000 years old, were constructed only between the 12th and 15th centuries. They were not the work of ancient Phoenicians or Israelites, but of local African builders, the ancestors of the Shona people. This city, known today as Great Zimbabwe, became a powerful kingdom built on gold, ivory, and long-distance trade. Its wealth was real, its architecture extraordinary, but it had nothing to do with Solomon. Moch died young, never realizing the true significance of his discovery. Yet, ironically, his mistake helped bring global recognition to one of Africa's greatest civilizations. The real breakthrough in the search for Solomon's wealth would not come until modern times. For centuries, explorers had sought gold mines, assuming that Solomon's treasure must have been literal gold. But what if the key was something else, something even more valuable in the Bronze Age? Archaeologists began to consider copper. In ancient times, copper was as vital as oil is today, essential for tools, weapons, and trade. A king who controlled large-scale copper production could amass immense wealth. Attention turned to the Araba Valley, a desert region stretching between modern-day Israel and Jordan, where copper deposits had long been known. In the early 2000s, archaeologist Thomas Livy excavated the site of Hirbat en-Nas, literally ruins of copper. There his team uncovered vast layers of copper slag, the byproduct of smelting ore. To their amazement, radiocarbon dating revealed that the site had been most active in the 10th century BC, the very era when Solomon ruled. The evidence grew stronger in Israel's Timna Valley. Since the 1930s, this desert landscape had been recognized as the site of ancient copper mines, though most scholars dismissed their connection to Solomon. But beginning in 2013, Israeli archaeologist Erez Ben Yosef re-examined the site using modern methods. In 2025, his team made a discovery that finally solved the mystery. While excavating a site known as Slaves Hill, they uncovered something unexpected: perfectly preserved animal dung. At first, the team thought it was modern, perhaps left by nomads. But radiocarbon testing revealed it was 3,000 years old, dating exactly to Solomon's time. Inside the dung were traces of seeds and pollen, evidence that animal feed had been imported from over 100 miles away. This was no small village. It was a massive, organized operation, with resources brought in from faraway lands to sustain both workers and livestock. Other discoveries soon followed: fortified walls protecting the mining camp, industrial-scale smelting sites, and vast amounts of copper slag. More than 1,000 tons of debris were unearthed, showing production on a scale worthy of a kingdom. This was not just a local effort, but part of a vast economic network. Copper, as Ben Yosef explained, was the oil of the ancient world. And Solomon, whether by direct ownership or by controlling trade routes and taxation, clearly benefited from this copper industry. The mines themselves may have been run by the Edomites, Israel's neighbors and occasional rivals, but the wealth they generated flowed into Solomon's coffers. This realization changes everything. Solomon's gold mines were not literal gold mines at all. They were copper mines. Operations so advanced and so lucrative that they could fund the construction of his legendary temple in Jerusalem and support the grandeur described in the Bible. Solomon's wisdom may well have included the insight to control and tax these vital resources, turning copper into gold through trade and diplomacy. Today, the mystery of Solomon's wealth no longer rests on fantasy. Thanks to decades of excavation, radiocarbon dating, and painstaking analysis, we now know that the biblical accounts, while exaggerated in some details, hold a kernel of truth. The wealth of Solomon's kingdom was real, sustained by vast networks of mining, trade, and taxation. The discovery of copper mines in Timnah and Khirbat en-Nahas proves that this desert once fueled one of the most powerful economies of the ancient Near East. And in 2025, after 3,000 years of speculation, the puzzle has finally come together. Solomon's treasure was not lost, not mythical. It was copper, the metal that powered a civilization. The story of Solomon's mines reminds us of something profound. Legends are often rooted in truth, even if that truth looks different than we imagined. What began as a quest for golden cities and palaces has led us instead to a deeper understanding of ancient industry, trade, and power. And in the dry deserts of Israel and Jordan, the echoes of that ancient wealth still lie buried in the earth, waiting for new generations to uncover their secrets.